Welcome to the Savvy Scoop podcast, the show where we explore the people, problems, and possibilities of the intersection of law and technology. I'm your host, Doug Stryker. We'll talk about what's working in legal tech, what's not, and where things are heading with a few surprises along the way. This episode is brought to you by Savvy Training and Consulting, helping law firms stay sharp, secure, and future ready. Today, I am joined by Danny Foster, a distinguished attorney and founding partner at Foster Graham Milstein Calisher, one of Denver's premier independent law firms. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Danny specializes in representing individuals and families affected by serious personal injuries, including cases involving car accidents, medical malpractice, and wrongful death. His commitment to personalized client care and meticulous attention to detail has earned him recognition as one of Colorado's top 100 super lawyers and multiple accolades from 5280 Magazine and Best Lawyers. Before establishing FGMC in 2000, Danny served as a deputy district attorney in Denver, bringing a wealth of prosecutorial evidence and experience to his practice. Beyond the courtroom, Danny is involved in community service, holding leadership roles with a variety of local and international organizations. Danny's approach to law is deeply rooted in building strong client relationships and delivering impactful results. Danny, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you for having me, Doug.
So let's jump right in. As the founder and managing partner of a thriving 60-person law firm, you are in a unique position to see both the business side and the practice side of law. To start, could you please share a little bit about your journey of starting the firm from its evolution and into the practice that it is today?
Well, thank you for having me and for asking me these questions. I look forward to hopefully providing you some type of beneficial responses. Little bit about me. I graduated from DU Law School in 1996, and my first real job out of law school was working for Bill Ritter in the Denver District Attorney's Office. And I worked there for 2.5 years. I did a lot of county court representation, DUIs, child abuse, assaults, drugs. Moved up to the juvenile unit, prosecuted juvenile crimes. And then I would say, about April of '99, after I had been there for about 2.5 years, I realized that I was not cut out for a life of public service. I never really wanted to be in public service, but I had kind of cut my teeth there. I learned how to try cases, but I really wanted to do something more with my life. So I started my own law practice. I just hung up my shingle, and it was Daniel S. Foster, LLC, and I rented some space from an attorney from a small law firm that I had clerked for when I was in law school. And I took in whatever came in the door. I took in DUIs. I took in my first piece of litigation was a federal patent litigation case that had a complaint that was this thick. I can't even show you. I took in real estate. I took in divorces. And basically, if you're young and hungry and you have a little bit of grit, you're going to do whatever you can to pay the bills. And when you're pretty young, I was 29 and I didn't have a family. So it didn't really matter if I starved. And that's when you kind of have to take that leap, is when you're not afraid to starve, because you're just starving yourself. Quickly, I gained some traction, and I gained some traction from going out and hustling business. I joined a leads group through the Denver Chamber. I would take in whatever cases I could get through my leads group. I contacted every single attorney I knew, literally. I sent them all letters and said, send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, any of the crap you don't want. And it's amazing how much stuff people don't want. So they would throw it out the window and it would crawl down the street and find its way into my office. And I took just a bunch of stuff. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Slowly I got a little smarter. and I figured out how to play the game a little bit more. I was a little bit more discerning with the types of cases I took, but I maintained a large network of attorneys. I had my friends who did civil litigation. I had my friends who did real estate. I had my friends who did federal criminal defense, and I would take them out for lunch. I would pick their brain. I'd learn how to do certain things. And, I was hustling. I was hustling at 1,000 miles an hour. Um, and very quickly, probably within 6 months, I was making more money than I had as a DA, which of course is not a huge deal, but it was for me, it's great to be able to support yourself. So then towards the end of 99, I was friends with a guy named Bob Graham, and he had his own little practice, and he was looking for some more space. So we got together and we had lunch, and we were just talking about office sharing. And before the lunch was over, we decided we'd form a little two-person partnership, and I would do all the litigation and criminal, and he would do all the real estate and corporate. And we formed Foster and Graham, and we started January of 2000. And here we are now, 25 years later, still partners, still the best of friends. And we've, built a practice that I think we're both very, very proud of.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So from starting off hanging your own shingle to now, what, 30 attorneys and 60 people total. You and Bob are still together. The other partners you've brought on along the way. What do you see as some of the biggest lessons that you've learned or the changes in perspective of going from a two-person shop to a 60-person shop?
Well, we've actually got about 38 attorneys, but we're not counting, okay? Um, the biggest challenges between a 60-person shop and a two-person shop, I mean, I don't even know where you begin. They're so night and day. I mean, the the biggest challenges I think are you constantly have mouths to feed, lots of mouths to feed, lots of overhead. You're competing against, different size firms now. Before as a solo practitioner, you're competing against, solos really. Now you're competing against mid and large size firms, which actually we're pretty uniquely qualified to do because we have a price point that's way more reasonable than some of the 17th Street, firms. So that's one of the biggest things. I mean, we have fortunately, and with your help, for those listeners who do not know, in 2000, and I believe it would have been six or 2005,
2008, but carry on.
2008, but who's counting? We were busting. I mean, my brother had joined the firm, Dan Calisher had joined the firm, Mike Milstein had joined the firm, and we had started to build up specific lead practice groups, and I was able to focus more just on personal injury. And we had a real estate practice now, and we had a real corporate practice now, and a real litigation practice. So we were able to kind of diversify and find really good people to run those particular units. But we also, we couldn't manage it anymore the way we were managing it. We were absolutely managing it in a infantile way. And that's when I had talked to you, and I knew you had just gotten your MBA, and I was like, I wonder if Doug would be interested in running the shop. I mean, it's running a business. It's payroll, it's AR, it's AP, it's HR, it's the whole enchilada. And you really thought about it, and I know I think you were on your honeymoon and you were thinking about it, and then you came back and you said, yes, I'd like to do it. And you were just the kind of guy we needed at the time because you were bright, but you also had, a lot of vision. And you need a lot of vision to be able to corral a bunch of egos like attorneys. And it was just night and day. Once you started as our COO, it changed everything because I could focus more on actually practicing law, knowing that I had a safety net of Doug Stryker running the firm and running it in a far more sophisticated way than we had been doing it. It was ridiculous. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems that, small firms face is that, you have to find somebody you trust to run it. And it costs money. It just costs money, but in the long run, it saves you money. So now over the years, and as you've evolved and created this really cool business that you've started, we brought on, new management and we've created a very strong foundation. So we have an incredible back office now that we never had before. And it's a very strong management, accounting practice, IT, HR, and it allows us to grow the firm. And it allows us to really focus our time and attention on practicing law, even though, of course, as a managing partner, you got to look at the dollars and cents too. So it's more money, it's more responsibility. So that's the biggest, I would say, difference. But it is certainly fun. It's fun, but it's different.
So, for the listeners out there who don't know, and most of you probably don't, I worked for Danny for 6 great years, and we had a lot of fun together and learned a lot along the way. I think we all did, and helped grow the firm and standardize and create documents and policies and a lot of things that as a smaller shop we didn't have. And now you've got a thriving firm. How do you balance the need for generating revenue, keeping your non-revenue producing infrastructure at a level that's maintainable, attracting new attorneys, new laterals, new clients, keeping the clients you've got? How do you balance the budget? How do you balance or decide, looking 3 or 5 years down the road, where are the investments that you want to make now that will pay off in the future?
I mean, that is like such a gigantic question. I mean, you know, uh, um, I think after 25 years, you have a pretty good sense of cash flow. You have a pretty good sense of the people that you're bringing in. We don't waste our time with people who cannot be helpful to us. We're way more discriminating in our hiring practices that we're going to hire people for needs. We used to just hire anybody and try and find a need for them sometimes. But we're conservative from that standpoint. We're not going to overhire, uh, but there's a fine line between overhiring and then being kind of behind the eight ball because you don't have enough staff. And how do you kind of balance that? And I think, you know, our firm is, and I think one of the reasons we've been so successful for so long is because we really are, I consider us a small solo practice spread out amongst a bunch of practice areas, right? So we've got we can handle a great deal of projects, lots of different stuff. We've got our white collar stuff, we've got our blue collar stuff, we've got our corporate stuff. There's a lot of stuff we can do. So if one of our sectors is not hitting on all cylinders, we know another one will. And as a team approach, if my personal injury practice is sucking wind, which it has at times, I know the real estate practice is going to pick up the firm and vice versa. And I remember in 2008, 2009, when the real estate economy was, it was just in the crapper. Well, we found out a way to work on the debtor side of some Chapter 11 work, and we were very profitable. Or my PI practice or my criminal practice was very, very profitable. So having a sense of what hits and what doesn't hit, not over hiring, being very thoughtful about your hires, very thoughtful about your expenses. And, a lot of people are always like, well, where's the money coming in? And I'm like, yeah, the money coming in is an important question, but what about the money going out? So I've always developed the reputation, and I wear it as a badge of honor, that I fly spec every single expense this firm has. If you take your eye off the money, that's how firms go into the toilet. So I sign every check, every check. I do every bankroll. I do every not every payroll. I don't sign all those checks, but almost everything that goes out the door, I sign, and I look to see, do we have balances on that? Why are we advancing money on some of these cases where people owe us money? we're gonna, and we've tightened up our AR, but you have to look and say, why are we spending money on these kinds of things? Why are we wasting money on this kind of stuff? Because there's so many vendors out there who will try and sell you on a product for a law firm. And sometimes law firms bite on too much stuff. I'm sorry to say, because I know that that's, kind of what you do, but there are necessities and then there are luxuries. And I think that you got to really focus on the necessities and the luxuries have to come second.
So I remember, having been on the inside of this conversation for a long, long time, I remember when we went from a simple file share to a document management system. And the numbers of that investment were more than we wanted them to be. And I think as time has gone on, products like that or software platforms like that have only gotten more expensive. Do you see the value? How do you determine the value of your investment in a software platform as it relates to managing or growing the practice? And when do you decide it's time to cut something off? And especially in a very diversified practice where you've got tax and trust and estates and real estate and litigation and criminal, each one of those practices has their own set of software technologies that vendors are trying to sell you, that the attorneys think they want. When do you say yes? When do you say no? What did you spend money on that you thought was a bad idea that ended up being a good idea? And maybe,
Well,
without
yeah,
naming
yeah.
names, but maybe what did you spend money on that you thought was a good idea that ended up being a bad idea?
So, okay. First of all, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I don't know a lot of our IT stuff, and I put this all into the IT basket, but I've done enough investigation and I see how things work to know what I like and what I don't like. Okay. So, um, obviously, the biggest change, I think, certainly for our practice, came over COVID. When nobody was coming into the office, everyone was remoting in. We still were completely based on a server at our office. Everybody's remoting in, and it would take 15 minutes to download a document. And we're like, this is not going to be sustainable, certainly not for the long term. And that's right when all these new cloud-based client management systems were just popping up. And we're like, we got to do it. You got to invest the money, and it's got to be a really good cloud-based system that can handle the kind of caseload that we have. We can't just be a Dropbox. You got to have something that's very specific for law firms. And we finally decided to, bite the bullet and invest in it. And we spend a lot of money on our client management software, but it is what it is. I don't think we have much of a choice. There's not a lot of options out there, and it's just the cost of doing business. Now, the flip side is it helps us reduce a lot of filing. We are completely digital. There are no files here anymore. There are still some of these old law firms that are like, what do we do with all these files? And a long time ago, when you started, I saw that coming a mile away, and I was like, we have got, this is in '08. I'm like, we have got to start scanning and getting rid of these old files because we are going to just build up you know, thousands of dollars a month of physical file storage. And it got to be ridiculous. And we made that a priority, digitizing our entire office. And moving forward, now we don't have physical files. So that is a cost savings, right? Now, does it out save, how much, your cloud-based stuff? No, I mean, it's not, but it makes you more efficient. And efficiency is really the name of the game in law. You want to be as efficient as possible. You want to be able to move on to the next project as quickly as possible. So I've been very happy with NetDocs. That's our primary client management software. I know there's only a couple of choices out there, but I've been happy with them. We use Tabs as our software for our financial, and those are the two main systems that we have now. Many years ago, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, tried to start the personal injury practice into a specific personal injury software, cloud-based software, which, has got all these different fields that are designed specifically for handling massive quantities of PI cases. And I, what the problem is that I didn't want to have that system and my net docs, and then I'm going between one and the other, and it didn't work. The nice thing about my personal injury practice is that we don't need to worry about managing 1,000 files because we don't run a mill. We're not an advertising law firm. We're not on TV. We don't have those ridiculous billboards. So we don't have 10,000 cases coming in. We get all of our PI business from attorneys, prior clients, and corporate referrals. So we have a very high-end personal injury practice, and therefore we can create our own stuff for our own that will work with our own current NetDocs programming. So I don't need to have that, that other software. Certainly, like for trust and estates, they need some specific software that they use for generating forms, and the real estate has some things, but it's not a client management software, and that's the big difference. And that's so far it's working. I don't know what the future holds. I can't tell you what 3 years down the road is going to look like. But the biggest thing, and I think that this is something that all law firms can benefit from, is get these old files off of your cloud-based operating system, move them into cold storage. You don't need them. You can buy cold storage for pennies for the gigabyte, and then you've got them forever, but you don't need them active on your cloud-based server, right? So we've really spent a lot of time moving big old files off of our cloud base, so we're not paying for all that storage, and that's where you really get pounded.
Thank you, Danny, not to be terribly self-serving, but you're very tech savvy, and I know the firm is multi-generational. How do you feel that your attorney and your professional staff user adoption is with those products? Do you feel like you're getting the bang for the buck in terms of technology training? Are you above average, average, or something else in terms of using the products that are sunk costs already?
I would say the vast majority of our staff are pretty savvy on how to use it. Certainly, our younger staff do. I mean, there's no junior partner or associate here who doesn't understand this stuff, almost, it's inherent with how they grew up and were trained. Our older staff, people above my age, sometimes really do struggle with it. And but that's a thing of the past. And we help, we provide as much service as we can to those who are struggling with it. But we really try and make sure that we use services like Savvy to help train people on how to do this kind of stuff. It's complicated. Our paralegals are very, very good. I mean, they're the ones who are probably training us more than anything. But you got to train. You got to go through it because there's, you know, you got to know what to expect, and you got to know how to use it in order to maximize it. And now with the whole AI revolution, and how that is absolutely going to change the practice of law. I mean, it is changing it as we speak. By the day, we are seeing AI absolutely change the practice of law, and we have to stay ahead of that curve. I don't know if it's possible to. I don't know if you can stay ahead of the curve, but you have to do your best. You can't just not think about it and then try and pick it up 6 months down the road, because you're going to be left in the dust. That's what I'm concerned about.
Agreed. I think we could spend another few hours talking about just that. But for now, it's going to be time to close this out pretty soon.
We're not
So I
talking
got
politics? I
no,
thought this
not
is a political show.
not today, not today. Um, okay, Danny. Here's a quick lightning round. If you could give one piece of advice to another managing partner who's trying to leverage technology in their firm, besides files and cold storage, what would it be?
Find yourself a really good IT person or company and kind of trust them, because you're a lawyer. You don't know really what you're talking about when it comes outside of law. You have to trust people to train your people and to get you the best products. That's what I would say because I don't know it. I'm not an IT guy, and I don't pretend to be. So trust your IT people. Get good training. That's the most important.
Okay, Danny, what is your favorite legal technology tool?
My favorite legal technology tool. God.
I remember the days when
Yeah.
you wanted everybody to learn how to edit their
Bills.
pre-bills on an iPad.
Right. Right. That I was one of the first people who did that. I bought how many of those we bought? We bought like 20 not iPads but that's back in the day when, I didn't want them printing up thousands of pages of literal paper. And then, it was like, this is a waste of time. Just do it digitally, upload your files to accounting and let them finish them up. I still believe in that, but I would say my favorite, I probably would say I'm still a fan of, I like what's going on with Westlaw right now. I think Westlaw is really adapting to the AI revolution. You're able to you're able to get information very, very quickly. And stuff that used to take a couple of hours of research, you can type in the most specific search term and it will kick out a memo for you. You have to double check all the case law and such, but it's coming from Westlaw, so the case law is going to be accurate, and you just get answers very quickly on very esoteric stuff. So I think that that's the most fun that I've had so far lately because it helps me answer questions quickly.
Real quick, thinking about AI, I know you've got some summer interns or associates coming on board for the summer. Will their workload change from
Mhm.
this summer to last summer based on what AI can do for them?
I don't know. I got to be honest with you. We last year, I sent a couple of our associates to one of our. We're part of Mackerel International, which is an international network of independent law firms, and we're the Colorado firm. There's a firm in London. There's a firm in Miami that, and we basically work together. If I have a case in Iowa, I've got the firm in Iowa that I can refer to that I have trust and confidence in. But we did send, but they do have what's called an emerging leaders conference, and it's for associates and junior partners. And a couple of my associates went last year, and it was all AI based. And they came back, like, holy crap, we have got to get on board with this. So they actually lead our AI committee for our law firm right now. And they
Fantastic.
come back from some of these trainings, and they're like, oh my God, we might not have a job, right? Because this stuff is so sophisticated. I don't care if people use AI or ChatGPT or something like that to help them construct some ideas and arguments and analysis and summarizations, but they still have to use their brain. And I'm pretty good, at least, in sniffing out stuff where I feel like this doesn't make sense to me. And I hope that if they use it as a tool and not as the substantive answer to anything. But I guess we're gonna see. We're gonna see how they do.
Yeah, I agreed. All right, we're going to close out with one question. What is the best advice that you have ever received as a lawyer?
The best advice I've ever received as a lawyer. Well, I've gotten a lot of good advice. One piece of advice is if you are a hustler, and the advice that I give to my people is you got to hustle. If you're not willing to hustle and generate your own clients, then you'll never be in control of your own practice, period. And there are the hustlers and there are the non-hustlers. And I don't need everybody in my firm to be a hustler, but I need a lot of them to be hustlers because you got to go out and generate business. That's something that AI can't do for you, right? You got to create those relationships. You got to be thoughtful and you got to return phone calls. You got to document your files. And the most important thing is you got to be honest with your clients. If you do something wrong, you got to own that. Clients appreciate that. And I've seen too many attorneys over the years who try and make excuses for things that other people did without owning it themselves. And nobody appreciates that. And we used to have a motto here at Foster Graham. You probably know this motto, but
I probably still say it.
you might still say it. It says, we might fuck up your case, but we won't steal your money. Okay? And people appreciate that level of honesty, right? Now we try not to fuck up your case, but you got to be honest with people. And I think that that's really the best thing, because you get one reputation in this business. And if you do something stupid, and every month in the Colorado Lawyer, there's a list of people who have been censured, suspended, or disbarred for doing something stupid, stealing their clients' money, not getting back to their clients, blowing stuff off, blaming other people. And that's it. That's their career. And we just have no tolerance for that here.
All right. That was amazing, Danny. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights. And to our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, stay savvy.
Stay savvy.